The grand hall of the Sealerith Palace shimmered like a sea of light and crystal. Walls made of translucent quartz refracted soft blue hues that rippled across the room. Hundreds of alien dignitaries stood in silence, their silver robes swaying slightly as the great doors opened. A group of humans entered, tall, armored, and foreign. Their boots echoed against the marble floor like distant thunder. The air felt heavier, filled with curiosity, suspicion, and something unspoken. At the center of the hall sat Princess Liara, the only daughter of Emperor Vareth. Her skin glowed faintly under the crystalline light, a trait of her royal lineage. Her silver eyes, usually cold and unreadable, narrowed slightly when she saw the humans. They were here for peace, or so her father claimed. But in the deep memory of her people, humans were still whispered about like a storm that once tore through the stars. Among the humans was Captain Nathan Hale, a soldier scarred by war, but carrying himself with calm precision. His uniform was plain compared to the glittering armor of alien guards, yet somehow more imposing. When his gaze lifted toward the throne, it met hers. Just for a second, it should have meant nothing. A glance, a diplomatic courtesy. But in that moment, something shifted in Liara's chest. The translator drone's voice broke the silence. Captain Nathan Hale, representing the United Earth Alliance. Nathan bowed slightly. His voice was steady but low. Your Majesty, Princess, we come to offer alliance, not conquest. The Emperor's eyes were cold. Alliance with those who once burned our colonies? We have not forgotten the ash. Nathan didn't flinch. And we have not forgotten the blood we spilled defending our own. Every guard in the hall stiffened. Liara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but something strange. This human was not afraid of her father, not even of death. His tone was heavy with honesty, not diplomacy. As the debate continued, she could hardly focus. Her people considered emotions weakness. Royal blood was supposed to be pure of such things. Yet, as Nathan spoke of rebuilding what was lost, she felt her heart betray her, beating faster, louder, like it had been waiting to hear this human voice all her life. Later that night, when the guests were shown to their chambers, Liara stood on her balcony, looking down at the human delegation's wing. She could see Nathan in the courtyard below, his armor off, sitting alone under the violet moons. He was writing something on a small metallic tablet, perhaps a message home. His face looked tired but peaceful. Strange creatures, whispered her handmaiden. So fragile yet so proud. Liara didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on him. She didn't understand why her chest ached this way. Her people's physiology made it impossible to feel human emotion, yet something was changing inside her, something her biology couldn't explain. Suddenly, a tremor shook the palace. A low alarm began to sound. Distant explosions echoed from the city walls. The Sealerith guards rushed through the corridors, shouting about rogue insurgents. The humans were accused immediately, though they had only just arrived. Liara's father ordered their arrest. Before dawn, Nathan was surrounded, unarmed, standing in front of the palace gates. His men shouted in confusion. Liara arrived just as the soldiers aimed their plasma rifles. "Wait!" she shouted, her voice cutting through chaos. Everyone froze. Her eyes locked on Nathan's, and in that second, she saw something she hadn't seen in anyone: trust. Princess stepped aside, barked her father's general. She didn't. If you fire, you start another war. The courtyard went silent. The human soldier and the alien princess stood facing each other, divided by species, history, and duty, but connected by something neither could name. Nathan spoke softly. "I'm not your enemy." "I know," she whispered. It was the first honest thing she had said in months, maybe in years. As the palace guards lowered their weapons, Liara felt her world tilt. The palace had returned to an uneasy silence after the morning chaos. The guards stood doubled at every gate, and whispers of treason filled the corridors. By imperial order, the human delegation was placed under protective detention. In truth, it was a softer name for captivity. Princess Liara sat at her window, staring at the twin moons reflected in the distant ocean below. She should have felt relieved. The humans hadn't been executed. But the image of Nathan standing unarmed before a dozen plasma rifles haunted her mind. His calm, his voice, his eyes that didn't hold fear, only quiet understanding. Her father, Emperor Varith, had forbidden her from speaking to the humans again. Their presence is poison, he said. They bring chaos wherever they walk. You'll forget them, Liara. But she couldn't. Later that night, the corridors of the palace glowed dimly with the light of bioluminescent vines that climbed the marble walls. The air was heavy with the scent of moon blossoms. Wrapped in a dark cloak, Liara moved silently, her soft boots making no sound on the cold floor. Her heart pounded with each step, not out of fear of the guards, but of what she was about to do. She descended the hidden stairway that led to the lower chambers, the place where political prisoners were kept. Her handmaidens would have been horrified to know their princess was sneaking into the dungeons to meet a human. The door slid open with a low hiss. Inside, Nathan sat on the edge of a narrow metal bench, his wrists bound by light restraints. The faint blue glow from the walls lit his face, and even now, with bruises on his cheek and exhaustion in his eyes, he managed to smile when he saw her. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I didn't think the Emperor would send his daughter to finish the interrogation." Her voice trembled. "You think I came to harm you?" He shrugged, a ghost of a grin tugging at his lips. "In my experience, royalty doesn't visit prisoners for friendly conversation." She stepped closer, and the scent of alien blossoms clung faintly to her cloak. "I came because I believe you. You didn't attack the city." Nathan looked at her closely, as if searching for deception, but all he saw was sincerity. "Then you're the only one." Liara lowered her hood, revealing her silver hair that caught the faint light, like flowing mercury. The explosion, it came from the south wall. My guards reported the energy signature. It wasn't human tech. Nathan frowned. "Then someone wants us blamed." "Why?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Because a war is easier to start than peace." Silence filled the cell for a long moment. The hum of the security field pulsed gently between them. Nathan leaned back against the wall. "So you risked your life to tell me this?" "I had to know the truth," she whispered. "And I had to see if you were all right." The admission startled even her. She wasn't supposed to feel. Her people's hearts were trained to obey logic and discipline. Emotions were considered primitive. But standing here, in front of a human soldier she had met only once, she felt something raw and real. Nathan smiled faintly. "You shouldn't be here, Princess. If they find out, they'll—" "I know," she interrupted. "That's why you'll be gone before they do." He blinked. "Gone." Liara reached into her cloak and produced a small, shimmering device. "This will deactivate your cell field for 1 minute. There's a maintenance shaft that leads to the old gardens. From there, you can reach the cliffs." Nathan stared at her, disbelief written across his face. "You're helping me escape? You'll be branded a traitor." She took a deep breath. "If I let you die for something you didn't do, I would already be one." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The faint hum of the device, the flicker of the lights, and the pounding of Liara's heart filled the silence. Nathan finally said softly, "When I first saw you in that hall, I thought you hated me." She looked away. "I thought I did, too." Their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. Fragile yet unbreakable. Liara activated the device. The blue light around the cell flickered and vanished. The door clicked open. "Go now," she said. Nathan hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll buy you time." He stepped close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "If I go, I'll come back," he said. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "I will." Before she could reply, he slipped into the corridor and vanished into shadows. The cell door sealed behind him, leaving Liara standing alone. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for the first time, she realized she wasn't afraid. She was alive. Moments later, alarms blared through the palace again. Guards rushed past her, shouting that the human prisoner had escaped. She forced her expression to stay calm as they searched the corridors. But deep down, she knew the palace was in chaos. Screams echoed down the corridors. Orders barked in every language of the empire, and guards scrambled to search every corner of the citadel. Nathan Hale had escaped, and Princess Liara had been the only one to help him. For a brief moment, as the palace trembled with confusion, Liara stood in the shadows of her chambers. She had activated the emergency security override, just as planned, allowing Nathan to slip past the palace defenses. But the alarms that followed his escape were a harsh reminder that this wasn't over. As the panic unfolded, she felt the weight of her actions pressing on her chest. The princess had betrayed her people, but it was too late to turn back. Her mind raced as she stood at her window, staring out over the palace grounds. The guards had already begun to search the lower levels and the outer gardens, but she knew Nathan would be long gone by now. The hidden maintenance shaft had led him to the ancient gardens, which sprawled beneath the cliffs that bordered the city. If he'd followed her instructions, he would have been safer now. The real question was, why did they want him dead? The sound of footsteps broke through her thoughts. She turned just in time to see General Kale, her father's most loyal officer, entering her chambers. His stern face betrayed no emotion as he spoke. "Princess, your actions have not gone unnoticed." Liara straightened, forcing herself to meet his icy gaze. "I did what was right." "Right." Kale's voice was low, dangerous. "You helped a human escape. A human who was at the center of an assassination plot against the Emperor." Liara's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Kale stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply against the stone floor. "You think we're just at war with the humans for nothing? The humans want to take what is ours. Your father's empire is under threat, not just in their armies, but from their spies within our own walls." "Spies?" Liara's throat tightened. She had always been taught that her father's reign was unchallenged, that their people were above the turmoil of other races. To think that the humans had infiltrated their ranks was unthinkable. "They've been here for years, Liara," Kale continued, his voice low and accusing. "The humans were never here for peace. They're planning to destroy us from within. Nathan Hale is just a puppet in their game, and you—" He paused, his eyes narrowing. "You have made yourself a pawn as well." Liara's chest tightened. "I refuse to believe that." I saw his eyes. He's not a part of any plot. "I don't care what you saw in his eyes. He's an enemy soldier, and he's been trained to deceive people like you. You've been manipulated. Princess." Kale's tone grew colder. "And now your loyalty is in question. If you continue down this path, you will stand with traitors, not with the Empire." Her head spun. Kale's words didn't align with what she had seen and felt. If the humans were indeed planning something, why hadn't Nathan said anything? Why had he risked his life to save her, instead of completing some covert mission? "I won't betray my people," Liara said, her voice steady despite the doubt creeping into her heart. "But I won't stand by and let my father destroy those who don't deserve it either." Kale was silent for a moment, then he sighed. "Then you leave me no choice." Before she could react, Kale turned and signaled to his guards. Two of them stepped into the room, grabbing Liara by the arms before she could resist. "Take her to the holding cells. She is to be placed under house arrest until further notice," Kale ordered. "House arrest." Liara's voice shook. "You can't do this. I'm the Emperor's daughter." "You are a threat to the Empire now," Kale replied coldly. As the guards dragged her out of the room, she cast one last look out the window, her mind swirling. Nathan had escaped, but now she was a prisoner, trapped in the very place she had once called home. Nathan wasn't the only one running. The moment Liara had set him free, a new war had begun, not with weapons, but with lies and betrayals. Kale's words echoed in her mind as she was led down the cold stone corridors. "You've been manipulated." She didn't know what was true anymore. Was Nathan Hale really part of some grand conspiracy, or was he just another pawn in a game too dangerous for her to understand? Outside the palace, Nathan raced through the alleyways of the old city. The streets were darker here, hidden from the watchful eyes of the Empire. His mission was to find the truth, to uncover the conspiracy Liara had hinted at. But where would he even begin? He didn't know it yet, but the answers he sought were closer than he realized, buried deep within the heart of the Empire he had been sent to destroy. And Liara, trapped inside her, the underworld of Sealerith was a place where no royal foot had ever stepped. Hidden beneath the glittering city and beyond the reach of the Empire's watchful eyes, the city's depths thrived in shadows. Here, in the forgotten tunnels and abandoned sectors, it was said that even the Empire's most trusted officials couldn't see what occurred. And that was exactly why Nathan Hale had come. The streets were narrow and damp, bathed in a sickly green light from bioluminescent plants that grew uncontrollably here. The air was thick with a strange metallic tang, and the sounds of distant machinery hummed beneath the ground. Nathan kept his head down as he moved through the alleys, avoiding the occasional road patrol and the occasional street vendor who might recognize him as a foreigner. His mission was clear: find the truth, and if possible, stop the conspiracy that seemed to be growing larger with every step he took. He had learned something in the days following his escape. Princess Liara was not the only one questioning the narrative of the Empire. There were whispers, and they were louder now, hidden beneath the layers of silence. Nathan had stumbled upon an old contact from his military days, a figure who operated in the murky depths of the city. Griffin was his name, and he was a former ally in the Resistance, a man who knew the dark dealings of the Sealerith Empire better than anyone. Griffin had offered Nathan a place to stay, a safe haven for the moment, but more importantly, Griffin offered something invaluable: information. "I know what they've been doing to the humans," Griffin had said, his voice low and tinged with bitterness. "I've seen it firsthand. They're not just here for peace. They're here for something much darker." Nathan had felt a chill run down his spine. Something told him that the secrets of the city ran far deeper than anyone had imagined. The room Griffin led him to was nothing more than a small, grimy basement, the walls lined with old tech and tattered maps. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing Nathan in with a stranger who had so much to reveal. "I don't know if you're ready for this," Griffin muttered, his hand shaking as he fiddled with a small data pad. "But it's the truth. You need to see it to understand." Griffin turned the data pad toward Nathan. The screen flickered to life, showing a series of encrypted transmissions. Nathan's heart pounded as he read the first message. "We've secured the final phase of the project. Proceed as planned. The humans will be used as a tool, not allies. The final weapon will be activated." Griffin's voice was tight. "It's not just about military conquest. They've been experimenting with human biology. Their scientists have been working on a weapon that uses human DNA. And it's not just for fighting. It's much worse. The goal is to control humanity, to manipulate their minds, to enslave them." Nathan felt his stomach twist. He had known war. He had known the violence, the deaths, the destruction. But this was something he could barely comprehend. The idea that his people, the humans, were being used as a tool to manipulate them, to control them like puppets. It made him sick. "They've been doing this for years," Griffin continued. "And your emperor, he's been behind it all. He's been orchestrating everything. But there's a faction within the Empire that wants to stop him. They know the truth. That's why they're killing anyone who tries to expose it." Nathan's thoughts turned to Liara. Could it be possible that her father, the man she worshipped, was behind all this? That he had been involved in such a horrific conspiracy? It seemed impossible. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Liara paced her room, her mind racing. She had been locked away under house arrest for what felt like an eternity, but in truth, it had only been a few days. The walls of her chambers felt suffocating, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face, his eyes filled with confusion and fear. She had not meant for any of this to happen. She had acted on instinct, driven by something she couldn't even explain. But now, her father's actions were starting to feel like something out of a nightmare. She had always believed in his authority, in his decisions. He was the emperor, after all, but what if he wasn't the man she thought he was? What if he had been using her, using all of them, to further his own dark agenda? The thought was unbearable, but the more she pondered it, the more she realized it might be true. Her father had always been a shrewd leader, but this was something else entirely. Her hand gripped the edge of her desk, her nails biting into the cold stone. It was in that moment that the door to her room opened, and she was met with the cold gaze of General Kale. "The Emperor has requested your presence," he said, his voice dripping with authority. Liara's heart skipped a beat. "Now!" Kale nodded. "It is time to decide where your loyalty lies, Princess, with the Empire or with the traitors." Liara clenched her fists. This was the moment she had feared. The moment when she would have to make a choice between her people and what she now suspected was the truth. Back in the shadows of the city, Nathan prepared for the next step. He knew he couldn't do this alone. The conspiracy was bigger than him. It was bigger than anything he had ever faced. And as the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place, he realized one thing. If he wanted to stop the war, if he wanted to save both the humans and the Sealerites, he had to make a choice, too. It was no longer about just surviving. It was about bringing down the people who had orchestrated this nightmare, and the one person who held the key to everything, Princess Liara. The palace stood in a silence that felt heavier than any battle. Princess Liara stood before her father, Emperor Vareth, in his private chamber. The vast room was bathed in the golden light of the setting twin moons, their glow shimmering against the black marble floors. The air was thick with tension, as if the very walls of the palace were holding their breath. Her father sat on his throne, draped in royal robes that sparkled with the faint light of distant stars. He looked regal as always, but there was something colder about him now, something that made her skin crawl. "Father," Liara began, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed, "what is happening in this empire? What is it that you're hiding?" The Emperor's gaze did not waver. His cold, calculating eyes fixed on her with an intensity that felt like a predator sizing up its prey. "You have a choice to make, Liara." Her heart skipped. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She had been locked away for days now, isolated from the world, and yet the truth of her situation had never been clearer. "Choose," he repeated, "whether you stand with the Empire, or you stand with the traitors who would see it burn." "Traitors?" Liara's voice cracked. "You want me to choose between you and the truth." The Emperor's lips twisted into a thin, bitter smile. "Truth is a luxury, my daughter. The Empire needs strength, and strength is built on loyalty, not weakness. You allowed yourself to be swayed by emotions. A human soldier, no less. Do you understand now, Liara? Your heart has betrayed you, and with it, you have betrayed the very foundation of this empire." Liara's fists clenched at her sides. "You're wrong. Nathan Hale didn't come here to destroy us. He came to warn us. He came because someone is pulling the strings from within. And you," her voice faltered as she took a step toward her father, her gaze never leaving his. "You've been orchestrating this all along, haven't you? You've been using the humans, manipulating their biology to create a weapon. And you've been using me to hide it from the rest of the Empire." The Emperor's face darkened, but he did not deny it. Instead, his lips parted in a slight sigh, as if the weight of his daughter's words were a passing irritation. "You think I would allow my empire to be taken over by the humans? You think I would let them build a nation stronger than ours?" Liara's chest tightened. "The humans never wanted war with us. You're the one who's been stoking the fires. You've been building weapons and biological experiments, all in the name of what? Power? Control? You created a weapon that uses their very DNA. You've been changing them, manipulating them like tools, not people." Her voice rose, breaking to calm the room. "And you've been hiding it from everyone from me. You've kept the truth buried, and you've used me as a pawn to help you keep it that way." For the first time in the conversation, the Emperor's expression faltered. His steely exterior cracked, just slightly, and for a fleeting moment, Liara saw something in his eyes, something close to regret. "You don't understand," Varys said quietly. "I did what I had to do. The humans were always going to rise. I had to prepare for the inevitable, to protect the Sealerith people, to secure our place in the stars. I had to make sure we were the ones who would rule. The universe is a cruel place. Liara, we cannot afford weakness." Liara recoiled, the words cutting through her like a blade. "So this is the truth? This is what you've been building for all these years? A kingdom built on blood and lies?" Her father's voice grew harsh. "You don't understand the stakes. The humans, they are unpredictable, dangerous. The Empire needed a way to control them. But you, my daughter, you could have been the bridge. You were supposed to be the key to unity. That's why I had you trained. That's why I kept you close. You were always supposed to be part of this." Her knees felt weak and the floor beneath her seemed to shift. The revelation of her father's dark intentions hit her like a tidal wave. She had been a tool, a means to an end. "I won't be your pawn anymore," she whispered, her voice steady now. The Emperor's eyes flared with anger. "You are no longer in a position to make demands, Liara. If you choose to side with the humans, you will be cast out. You will be nothing, a traitor to your people." Liara took a deep breath. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest, but there was no turning back now. "I choose the truth." Veritha's gaze hardened, and in that moment, Liara knew there was no going back. Her decision had sealed her fate, just as surely as it severed her ties to the Emperor she had once admired. "I've given you everything," the Emperor spat. "And this is how you repay me? You turn your back on your blood, your heritage." Her voice was calm, but her heart was pounding. "I don't turn my back on my people, Father. I turn my back on the lies you've built this empire upon. I will fight for what is right, even if it means standing alone." For a moment, the room was still. Then, without another word, the Emperor turned his gaze away, dismissing her completely. Liara didn't wait for his permission. She turned and walked toward the door, the weight of the future heavy on her shoulders. The road ahead would be dangerous, but it was the only road she could follow now. The truth had set her free, and now it was time to stop the darkness that had been festering within the Empire for far too long. The weight of the decision had settled in Liara's chest, but the urgency of her next steps overwhelmed the uncertainty. There was no time for second-guessing now. She had chosen the truth, and now she would do everything in her power to stop the nightmare her father had set in motion. By the time Liara reached the palace gates, she knew the Emperor would soon send his forces after her. It was only a matter of time before the full extent of her betrayal reached his ears. The city had already been put on high alert. The guards watched every corner, every shadow, every movement. She had to leave, and quickly. She had one destination in mind, the hidden sector beneath the city where Nathan had taken refuge. It wasn't safe for him there, but it was the only place where she could be sure he would find answers. They would need to act together to uncover the full scope of the Emperor's plot before it was too late. Nathan had to know about the weapon, the what her father had been hiding for so long. It wasn't just a biological weapon, as Griffin had said. It was something much worse, something more devastating. The Emperor's plan to control the humans had morphed into something darker. And now, with Liara's help, they might be able to stop it before it was too late. The underground passageways were a far cry from the grandeur of the palace. Dirt and rust lined the walls, and the air felt thick, as if it had been trapped here for centuries. Liara's heart raced as she moved through the hidden tunnels, guided only by the faint glow of the bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls. She didn't know what awaited her at the end of this path, but she had no other choice. The journey felt like it took forever, but eventually she arrived at a small, inconspicuous door wedged between two crumbling walls. She hesitated for a moment, listening for any sound from the other side. When she heard nothing, she pushed the door open and stepped into a room that smelled of damp metal and dust. Nathan was sitting at a table in the center of the room, scribbling something on a data pad. His expression was intense, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and in many ways it was. When he looked up and saw her, his eyes softened, but only for a moment. "Liara," he said, standing up, "I didn't think I'd be seeing you again. I thought the palace would have found you by now." She gave him a weary smile. "I'm not easy to catch." Her voice held an edge of defiance, a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed until now. Nathan nodded, but the seriousness of the situation was clear. "What's going on? What did you learn?" Liara's face hardened. "My father, he's been using the humans for something much darker than I thought. He's been building a weapon, one that will control our minds. And the humans," she paused, her voice faltering, "the humans aren't just being used to fight. They're being turned into something else. The Emperor plans to use this weapon to dominate the galaxy, to control not just the humans, but anyone who stands in his way." Nathan's eyes widened. He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. "Control them how? With a human's DNA?" Liara nodded grimly. "Yes, he's been experimenting with their biology, trying to create a hybrid weapon that can take control of human minds. But it's worse than that. It's not just about using them for war. The weapon is designed to override the free will of every human it touches. It's like a virus. Once it's activated, it will spread. Nathan's face grew pale. A virus that can control people? And you're saying your father is the one who's been doing this? Liara's fists clenched at her sides. Yes, he's been playing a dangerous game for years. And now, we're on the brink of disaster. Nathan stood up, pacing the room. Then we need to stop it. We need to find the weapon before he activates it. Do you know where it is? Liara hesitated. Yes, I have the location. But we'll need to act fast. The weapon is already in the final stage of activation. My father plans to use it on the human population tomorrow. Nathan's jaw clenched. We don't have much time. Where is it? Liara's eyes flickered to a small holographic map displayed on the wall. She pointed to a location deep within the palace, an area that was heavily guarded and protected by the Emperor's most loyal soldiers. It was a final phase of the Emperor's plan, the place where the weapon had been hidden away from prying eyes. We'll have to break in, Nathan said, his voice filled with determination. And we'll need to be careful. Once the weapon is activated, there's no turning back. Liara nodded. I know. I'll help you. But I need to get close to my father to stop him before he triggers it. You can't do this alone. Nathan looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. We'll do this together, Liara. We have no choice now. The galaxy's future depends on us. As they prepared to leave the hidden room, Liara felt the weight of their mission pressing heavily on her shoulders. The Emperor's plan was nearing completion, and their time was running out. Nathan was right. If they didn't stop the weapon now, the entire galaxy would fall under the Emperor's control. But there was one thing Liara knew for certain. She would stop her father, no matter the cost. Together, she and Nathan would face the darkness that had taken root in the heart of the Sealerith Empire and fight to save everything they had ever known. The halls of the Sealerith Palace had never felt so oppressive. Every step Liara and Nathan took echoed off the cold stone walls, their movements masked by the eerie silence that surrounded them. They had slipped past the outer guard stations and navigated the labyrinthine corridors beneath the palace. But the final stretch was the most dangerous. The heart of the palace, the Emperor's inner sanctum, was a fortress guarded by the Empire's most loyal soldiers and protected by layers of security. Yet, somehow, they had made it this far. We're close, Liara whispered, her voice barely audible in the tense air. Her heart raced with anticipation, and despite her calm exterior, fear gnawed at her. She had been in these halls 1,000 times before, but never like this, never as a fugitive. Nathan's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his blaster. Once we get in, we'll have no time to waste. If your father's planning to activate the weapon tomorrow, we can't afford to get caught. Liara nodded. The control room is just ahead. That's where the weapon's activation system is located. Once we shut it down, we'll be able to stop the weapon from being deployed. They moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows. Liara's thoughts kept drifting back to her father. He had been the center of her world for so long. How could a man she once admired be the architect of such destruction? The betrayal stung deep, but there was no time to dwell on it now. Nathan was right. The weapon had to be stopped, and they were the only ones who could do it. As they neared the control room, Liara felt her pulse quicken. The door ahead was guarded by 2 of the Emperor's elite soldiers. They were positioned in front of a high-tech security checkpoint, their weapons drawn and alert. We can't fight our way through, Nathan murmured, his voice grim. We'll have to find another way. Liara's mind raced. There had to be a way past them. And then she remembered. There's a ventilation shaft above them. It leads directly into the control room. We can use that to bypass the guards. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Liara gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't want to believe I'd have to do it, but now I have no choice. She moved quickly, climbing up a nearby support beam and reaching the access panel above the guards. Nathan followed, his movements quiet and precise, the 2 of them working in perfect sync. Once they reached the shaft, Liara pulled off the grate and crawled inside, followed closely by Nathan. The air inside the shaft was cool, and the faint hum of the palace's power systems buzzed in their ears as they carefully made their way to the control room. The shaft opened into a small vent that overlooked the control center. Below them, Liara could see the array of consoles, each one glowing with data as technicians worked to monitor the weapon systems. The entire room was bathed in the dim, sterile light of the consoles, the hum of machinery filling the air. Liara's eyes scanned the room. Her father's presence was still palpable here, even though he wasn't physically present. This was where his plans had been set in motion. This was where the weapon's final activation could take place. "We have to be quick," Nathan said, his voice low. "We don't know how much longer we have." Liara nodded, her mind focused. "I'll disable the security systems. You go straight for the weapons control panel. We need to shut it down before anyone knows we're here." Nathan moved into position, making his way toward the control panel. Liara crouched by the shaft opening, her fingers working quickly as she hacked into the security system. The display in front of her flickered as she bypassed the encryption codes, the pulse of adrenaline making her hands shake. "Got it," she whispered, as the security cameras and sensors went offline. Nathan moved toward the control panel, his movement swift and precise. As he typed in the command sequence to shut down the weapon, the console blinked red. "This isn't right," Nathan muttered, scanning the screen. "The weapon's not just a virus. There's something else here. Something bigger." Liara's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" Nathan's eyes locked onto the screen, his expression darkening. "The weapon isn't just a biological tool. It's been modified to link into the neural networks of the Silurids. Once activated, it will not only control humans, it will control us, everyone. The entire empire will be under its command." Liara staggered back, the weight of Nathan's words crashing over her like a wave. Her father hadn't just wanted to conquer the humans. He had been planning to control everyone, to make the Silurids and the humans into his puppets. The weapon was a tool of ultimate domination. "No," Liara whispered, horrified. "That can't be true. That's exactly what your father planned," Nathan finished. "It's worse than we thought. He wasn't just trying to conquer humanity. He was trying to enslave the entire galaxy." Liara's head swam with disbelief, but she knew it was true. The weapon was more powerful than any of them had imagined, and the clock was ticking. "There's still time," Nathan said, his voice sharp with urgency. "We can shut it down, but we have to hurry." Liara nodded, her hands shaking as she entered the final command to disable the weapon. But as her fingers hovered over the console, a voice cut through the silence. Well, I had a feeling you'd be here, Liara." Liara froze. The Emperor stood in the doorway of the control room, his cold eyes fixed on her. Behind him, his personal guard stepped forward, weapons raised. "I see you've learned the truth, my daughter," Vera said, his voice dripping with venom. "But it's too late. The weapon is already in motion." Liara's heart sank. "You can't stop it now," her father continued, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "The galaxy will bow to me, and you will watch as everything you've ever known falls apart."